Hail cheaters, welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good, Josh. I am riding on the fumes of seeing you in person in New York this weekend.
That's right.
What will make of game week 32 as we sort of process it and look ahead to the final 6 game weeks? I'm still not sure how I feel about how things went this game week. So we can kind of work through that.
I'm 0 for 2. We had a 2-game week, and I'm 0 for 2. I've reduced my rank by 50%. I had just crawled into the top 300K. Now I've somehow find myself at 450, and you might actually, you're on pace to overtake me now, which I thought at the very least I had a nice little cushion on you. And I think you might have. I think I'm still ahead, but just by a hair.
He thinks. He says. He knows.
I don't even know anymore. Are you?
I think
I actually don't.
I think we're about 15 points away from each other. So and that's interesting to analyze. Where you just said your OR, and I'm languishing at 576K, but I feel like, yes, you're very much within touching distance. So as people start to think about what are my rank goals for the 6 game weeks left, you can jump up a lot if somehow you get a magic hat trick from one of your midfielders. I continually do the math of what would it have been like if I had the Ollie Watkins haul and now the Phil Foden haul. I'm just going to have, as my background, Josh, I just should create the what could have been Hall of Fame. And we'll put Phil and we'll put Ollie. And I think the ones that have really stung this season, I wonder if a lot of managers listening will relate, are the players that you had. And those always sting worse than the players that you didn't have. So if you look at the results of game week 32, one thing's for sure, there was no standout player this game. I guess maybe Ollie Watkins was.
Yeah, who was the king of the game week, Brandon? I mean, I have to take a look here.
I wonder if it is Watkins, right? Because
it's Kevin of Bruyne.
Oh, of course, KDB. City just like an eternal blind spot. It's just like fantasy autopilot with them. I know one thing for sure, Josh. Never get a Manchester City goalkeeper or defender. That's a fact. You take that to the bank.
Should we add Liverpool to that too, outside of Trent?
Well,
you're what a waste of money.
You're feeling it.
Van Dijk.
I mean, and Connor Bradley was, I think, like a sensible way in because he's so cheap and he's just been punishing owners the last couple of game weeks.
I wonder if we're guilty. I certainly was guilty in 31 and 32 of maybe overdoing it with the sort of target Sheffield United approach, both in terms of spending a lot of points to acquire Salah and Van Dijk for 31, complete flop there, and then captaining Palmer in 32. And now, granted, that didn't really hurt me that much because nobody really went off. I mean, I guess ultimately Haaland would have been the best pick of the kind of all the big picks, but
I beg to differ, Josh. It was Salah who got the exact same points as Haaland, but I went Salah, and I was trying to do the reverse logic of the Cole Palmer captaincy. Was this guy had a huge haul against Manchester United, so I'm thinking less who's Cole Palmer have next. I'm thinking more who's playing Manchester United next because they have these devastatingly poor performances occasionally. Now, kudos to Manchester United fans because they did what they could against Liverpool at Old Trafford. Better than I expected, and it's a similar thing with Sheffield United, also the host team, where they put up a bigger fight against Chelsea. And so then you start to see, all of these flaws that we know about Chelsea kind of coming to the fore. Whenever Cole Palmer doesn't get a double-digit return, the narrative that's left is, what is the deal with Chelsea again?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly a pretty tricky week for the captaincy, right? Because the best options in Salah, Palmer, Haaland, they were all away. I guess Son certainly an option too. He was home, but Spurs have been putting up some really up and down performances. They're a little less reliable, maybe. Although Son has been very good at home, and he did pick up an assist. But I think that Saka might have actually been well, he did outscore all of them, but I think that the problem with him is it wasn't even clear if he was going to start this match, right? He didn't play a minute in game week 31, so made it a little dicey what to do there. But yeah, I'm just feeling a little, it's just if I feel like over the course of an FPL season, you could talk all you want about template teams and similarities and things like that, but I'm actually finding that there are a number of times when I've had pretty tricky decisions this season, and it's basically come down to kind of 50-50. Do I go with X? Do I go with Y? And I just feel like I'm getting those 50-50s wrong right now, and I think that to me they honestly are pretty close to 50-50, right? I don't think I'm making the wrong decision, right? I'm in a position where it's really quite close. And obviously, we talk about this a lot on the pod, but you can't actually, there's an obvious point, but like sometimes it's like you can try to like look at these numbers and look at the teams and look at the bookies odds and all this stuff. And it's like you can start to trick yourself into believing that you can like literally like see the future, right? That you can like literally figure it out as if like there's a script for the weekend that like you just need to like find where it's written, right? But it isn't, right? Like it's the difference between sometimes someone hits a crossbar when and that's a goal on a different day, and there's just sort of you can make good decisions and still have things not go super well, right? And
systems and moments, Josh. So we say that occasionally, and what that means is it's like the logic of football. You set up a system, a manager goes out there and sets up a system, and then the hope is that moments come out of that system. And that's how you win matches, and that's how you win fantasy is you have to have those moments.
Yeah. And I've sort of, transitioned from being frustrated this season to being somewhat, still very frustrated, certainly, but like, I've gotten a little more philosophical. I would say the last week has been a wake up call for me, in terms of my own, kind of personal level of engagement with with the management of my own fantasy team, right? Okay. Like the podcast is something that I always, not to get too like meta here, right? But like the you and I talking a couple times a week doing podcasts.
It's hard not to get meta,
yeah, hard not to get meta. It's always on my mind. I'm always thinking about the podcast, how to, how can we make it more fun to listen to, whatever, right? But like the actual management of my team, I think I've been like I have not taken as seriously, which is kind of hilarious considering this pod is literally like about playing a game as well as you can, right? But like, or at least ostensibly, that's what it's about, right? I'm not sure our pod is always about that, but like in theory, that's what the podcast is about. But I have found that I'm just not making transfers early enough, right? And so like team value has hurt me a ton this season. I've sat on my hands a little too often, sort of kind of doing, honestly, no offense, but like something I've seen you do in previous seasons, which is just sort of wait for the perfect transfers, right? So it's like you have a good, sensible transfer you could make this week, but you want to hold off until next week so that you have two transfers and you can make the perfect moves, you know? And I feel like that really, like this week was an example of that, where I really just didn't need to start Van Dijk away to Man United, right? And I sort of told myself a story, but it would have been so easy to move a Stupin onto an Everton defender, right? And that's a 6 or 7 point swing right there, if I make that move. And I was just sort of like, well, but I can make it perfect next week. I can get these amazing defenders from the best teams, and then I'm set up for the double and 34 even better, and it was like, it's like, if you want to not make a decision in fantasy, like in FPL, it's very easy to start to tell yourself a story, right? That allows you to not make any choices, right? Where you're like, you know what? I'll have so much flexibility if I just give myself one more week, right? But it's like when the cumulative effect of missing out on these 7 pointers, these 6 pointers, it really starts to erode your overall rank, I think, as the season's going on. And I don't mean that to be insulting, because I don't think you're doing that. I actually don't know that you've done that in recent seasons, but I remember a couple of years ago, I felt like that was like an approach that you would take sometimes. And I feel like that's like a trap that I've fallen into a little bit this season.
I would describe it as passivity. So you're just being passive. And often when I am in that position and I am passive, I agree. Like it's when it goes poorly, it feels bad because you haven't been a part of it.
Yeah.
As I've said, like in seasons past, like FPL just starts happening to you, and you're not.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You're not playing with it.
Yep.
And FPL for there can be times where it's fun and you have bad luck, but you've made a decision that you still can feel strongly about, and to have a lack of decision, it takes some of that like ownership away from how you play the games. I agree.
I think that's right. Like not making that transfer to me felt passive, and I'm pretty annoyed at myself. And I don't think I'm being too like retroactive about it. But like, Semenyo versus Sarabia was a 50-50 to me. You could certainly make an argument for starting Sarabia, and obviously I wish I had. But Semenyo, I was like, well, he scored a brace the last time they played Luton. Like I just kind of thought it would be another kind of open match like the last time they played each other, and it really wasn't. Maybe it kind of was at the very end.
Right. Watching that Wolves match with you at Smithfield Hall on West 25th Street, great place to watch football if you're ever in Midtown Manhattan.
Free plug, but a worthy plug because the people who work there are super nice.
It's fantastic. But it was interesting to see you with Sarabia on the bench when there was that disallowed VAR goal, and close your ears, Wolves fans. At the end, you kind of I could feel you hoping that the goal would be disallowed because it was a Sarabia assist, and you wanted less regret and remorse in your life, which I understand.
Yes. So his ownership was like at least 11% or something like that. There was like a practical, benefit to it as well. But also that. But my point is that to me is not something I'm going to spend a long time lamenting, right? Because that's a 50-50. That that was just a decision. There was there's nothing passive about that, right? Yeah. I just made a decision and I got it wrong. I can deal with that. It's let me hold off and have more flexibility for the perfect transfers. That's the kind of stuff that I don't think I'm doing when I'm kind of locked in,
So this actually plays into the transfers that I'm thinking about for game week 33/34. So I think we'll get into the nitty gritty of that later in the pod. But the major theme here, I think, is kind of like what's our sort of overall strategy for the 6 game weeks that are left.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit of that. I mean, I think we're going to look ahead to 33. I don't want to make the mistake of just ignoring the game week in front of us. I think this happens especially when you got a big double. And 34. It's really honestly very hard, though, to talk about your transfers without thinking about 34, right? It's sort of looming there just a week away from us. And just as a reminder for anyone who's forgotten, in 34, you have a bunch of teams that play twice. I believe it's Man City to Brighton. I've got to pull this up now. Sorry. So Man City, Sheffield, Liverpool, Palace, and Bournemouth and Wolves, I believe. As well as Arsenal. There you go.
Little tin pot team, Arsenal.
Yeah, Arsenal as well. Yeah. So I said that in about the most confusing way possible because I didn't have the exact. I was trying to do it just by looking at the fixtures for 34, which is I got pretty close. But let me just pull it up here and make sure I've got it exactly right. Right. So Arsenal, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton. I think I missed Everton. Liverpool, Sheffield, and Wolves. Now, I know that you're tripled up on Sheffield, but otherwise you're sort of Sheffield United, but otherwise you have no double game week players so far. So you're you're pretty tricky. No, I'm just kidding. You have.
I think they've looked great, Josh, and I'm here. You know, buck the narrative, break the template.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk any more about 32? You had an okay week, right? How many points did you finish on?
Sure. Let me throw my team up on the screen. I finished on 63 points, which I believe is exactly the same as yours.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I didn't realize we finished in the same. I thought, I thought you'd nicked me. So,
where I maybe you thought that Saliba didn't get a yellow card. That's probably the biggest complaint I have is my Arsenal defensive double up has been going very well with Saliba and Gabriel, and Ben White owners and Saliba owners had to stomach the yellow cards late in that game. But still, it looks like maybe the Arsenal defensive double up, even you could throw Raya in there, is maybe the way to go for the double in 34, as opposed to trying to pick another Arsenal attacker out of a hat, be it Odegaard. And so that's kind of like my thinking is Luis Diaz is looking as good and maybe has a slight fantasy edge on Odegaard. in terms of goal productivity.
I mean, he's arguably the form player on that team, including Salah, right?
So, I decided to go Salah captain, and it worked out just by the skin of my teeth. And, he's not looked quite the same since he had that outrageous, record number of shots against Brighton. And it's just not coming together. I do still feel like Salah, it's not like we'll never see top form Salah ever again, and he's always one game week away. And I'd say that more about Mo Salah than I would about Erling Haaland, who feels like he's still maybe a couple more weeks away from punishing fantasy.
You had an interesting comment on Saturday morning when I saw you. I saw you. We met up after the Man City, I guess as the Man City match was sort of coming to a close, maybe. And you were saying, I'm actually relieved that Haaland scored in that match. And I was thinking, well, I'm not, because at least a handful of people captained him, and he was over 100% owned, when you include the captaincy. And you were like, but I need to find a way to justify having 14 million invested in this guy.
So, and then similar thing with Salah, he gets his points just by way of penalty. I mean, pretty clear-cut penalty. So all of our money is tied up in Mo and Erling Haaland right now, and we're just not getting the returns that we'd expect. And, I don't have Ollie Watkins because I've got money tied up in these guys. I think maybe another dark cloud here is Solanke and Frankie Muniz at Fulham just continue to dog me. And we're going to talk about our on the beach index in a couple of minutes, and Bournemouth and Fulham are going to feature heavily, I suspect. So looking at my squad here, I think the decision I have to make is, how much longer do I want to hold Son? Do I want to hold Son for game week 33 away Newcastle? And that feels like a really good fixture for Spurs, just the way Newcastle have been defending. But that is me being a passive manager and not going ahead and getting Darwin and Luis Diaz because I want them for 34. The other option would be, I'm just going to move Souček to a make weight 4.1, 4.2 midfielder, which is the third part of that game week 34 move. So Son is weirdly the biggest question mark I have right now.
Yeah, similar to me, honestly. Son, I would say, is almost definitely going to go this week. Sort of in a pretty similar spot to you. I mean, I think ultimately we're going to end up with kind of the same players, unfortunately, in our 11, because I'm a little. I think, I don't know. I mean, Ben White. Does Ben White start every single Premier League game the rest of the season, or do we?
Why wouldn't he? Tell me why.
I don't know. Tomiyasu back. He surely he will, though, right? I mean, now that they have the title, in their what we say, in their control, right? I mean, you're technically they're tied with Liverpool, but it's a pretty significant goal difference, right? It's something like 14. By the way, I was looking at the table, and it's honestly kind of hard not to see Man City winning because it's just they don't have a really difficult fixture to go. I mean, maybe Fulham away is the hardest fixture that they have left on the agenda. And I think Arsenal have to play away to Man United and away to Spurs still this season. So I think, in Liverpool, it's do we trust them enough to win every game down the stretch? So I know we're making every fan base angry right now with this conversation, but I'm just as a kind of observer, it worries me a little bit. The Man United, the Liverpool draw today was I'd love to see Arsenal win it. I genuinely that is the team I am genuinely rooting for, but it can't be Man City. That's really what's most important to me.
That would be ideal. Yeah. Well, let's go back to the Ben White thing. Because I think this is a teachable moment for fantasy managers. You mentioned a few minutes ago about creating your own story in your head about how things are going to go. Sure. And you've got a great pick in Ben White, but for some reason you feel compelled to create a story to talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I guess it's the worry about it. I mean, it's just a lot. There are a lot of fixtures for these clubs over the next couple of weeks, right? Arsenal and Man City, especially, right? They have the Champions League at midweek. matches on the weekend, second leg of the Champions League, the following week, matches at the weekend, and then a midweek fixture after that, right? So it's 5 matches in whatever that is, right? 5 matches in 18 days, let's say. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a lot of fixtures. And so I could see them potentially, right, doing some level of rotation there. And so it just makes me wonder if I maybe want to go Saliba over White, just for the, I think Saliba is extraordinarily unlikely that he would be rotated at any point. Yeah. Maybe White, if he's maybe, honestly, what would be ideal? I don't know if it's going to happen. Would be for White not to start the Champions League match in midweek. The problem is it's they're playing Bayern Munich in the Champions League
I'm like, in what world does Ben White get rotated for that match?
Maybe you just run it out with these guys all the way to the end. I mean, Arteta's not he more this season than previous seasons, but he's not heavy on rotation, right? Yeah. And also, I don't know why I'm being so I guess the concern is just, I'm going to miss out on a clean sheet, right? That I that I'm not going to have Saliba, and even though he has less stacking threat, I'm going to miss out on a clean sheet just because he starts one more match than White over the next couple of weeks.
So I understand. We don't need to get into the nitty gritty of why not Raya or anything like that. But this is not the Josh I know where you're typically going for the more attacking move.
I hate it. I know this season has messed with my confidence a little bit. Yeah. And I have to I need the summer to reset a little bit.
So So you've kind of put a few prompts here in the running order, which speaks to this. And if you want to share your team on screen and look at your points or your game week for 32, that's cool. But also I want to pose a question to you of how aggressive do you feel like you want to be? Do you need to be? So I feel like maybe part of this is you were feeling motivated by a series of green arrows. That top 100K was in grasp just to put the season behind you. And maybe now you've said that's no longer achievable. So being aggressive is not your cup of tea here.
It's not impossible, but I've put myself in a very difficult position, I would say. And I think the last couple of weeks have taught us as well that, we now it's confirmed, by the way, that there's a double game week in 35 for Chelsea and Spurs, but increasingly I'm slightly concerned about the idea of kind of going all in on those two clubs, right? Despite them having 2 doubles, because I can't think of more in theory you can have 6 total players from those 2 squads, right? And it's really hard to think of more than 2 total that I'm super excited about. Sure, you could talk yourself into Pedro Porro and maybe Conor Gallagher, just to be a little different. I mean, Malo Gusto, if he's healthy, right? It's you're sort of literally you get above 1 player from each squad. James Maddison's been in terrible form, right? It's kind of hard to find
these fixtures
even a second option. Yeah.
And the fixtures for Chelsea and Spurs are not super appetizing. In that double in 35, Chelsea are away at Aston Villa, and then they host Spurs. And then Spurs themselves host Arsenal and are away at Stamford Bridge. I don't know. Maybe you give Spurs an edge against Chelsea at the Bridge, depending on if Spurs are able to find some form again. But it does feel like if Spurs are... the Spurs are lucky that Aston Villa are sputtering the way they are, and it still kind of remains very interesting who's going to be in 4th and 5th, though they might still get Champions League.
And a nice win for them today too, for sure. I think you might be right though. You might be onto something here, Brandon, which is that maybe I'm just not looking at these doubles in the most positive way. Right? Let's dig around. I mean, first of all, we don't have to do it on this pod because there's multiple game weeks in front of us. But, on this pod, on 34, as we look ahead to even just the next couple of weeks, what is a positive way to look at the transfers we could make, right? What is the more aggressive? And maybe that is what I just want to go out feeling like I feel like I'm putting my best foot forward, right? Missing a couple of price changes that forced my hand the last couple of weeks. Missing a deadline in 29, which I have never done. I think in 10 years of playing fantasy. It's just these these are like focus problems, right? And I think that they're fixable. And so I think being kind of focused and positive would be some goals for me. I don't know that I can really, like mini leagues and stuff like that, probably out of reach. But I think 100K is still possible. I'm still going to shoot for it. And if I finished even in the top 150, the top 200, I suppose I would see that as a not necessarily a successful season. Unless, I mean, just by like the standards that I set going into the season, right? I want to finish in the top 10K this season, right? And anything kind of even of the top 100K at least, right? And so for me personally, like I'm sort of missing those goals, right? But maybe I'm just being a little too focused on the fact that I've missed those goals, right? Yeah. And it's sort of like it's kind of easy to be like, well, screw all of this then, and just like I'm just gonna check out. Home. Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna check out until next year. It's not like I want to, so it's like I want to respect myself a little bit with my approach. So anyway, I do, Brandon, want to take a quick look at the table, because when you and I were we were watching the games at the Smithfield Hall on Saturday. I started to watch what I thought was a pretty. Ultimately, they kind of they ended up losing. So maybe my first impression was right. They did draw first blood, but they lost in the end, which was Bournemouth. And I was like, man, are Bournemouth like a little? Are things getting a little beachy for Bournemouth? Are we looking at an on the beach team here? And so, I just thought we should introduce a new weekly series here, Brandon, where you and I just take a quick look and decide whether we're adding anybody new to our on the beach rankings. Okay. Sure. So, and on the beach, for anyone who doesn't know, basically is you don't really get it in American sports, as far as I know. I think it's a distinctly English thing, maybe because they you have to leave the country to go to a beach. I guess you can go to Brighton, right? Or maybe you can go to
you don't go to beaches in England though, where you put on your swim trunks and your flip flops.
No, we're thinking like these are footballers, right? So we're thinking, Ibiza, right? Like stuff like that, right? So when you're on the beach, it basically means, and I suppose one of the reasons why, like I'm not gonna explain this origin for much longer here, but like I think part of it is like when you have promotion and relegation, there are always kind of two tables for you, or two ways to look at the table, right? Like one is, can I win the league? Can I get in Europe, right? Or can I get relegated? Right. That's the kind of other side of the table. And if you get down into the 30s, which is where we are now, right? We only have 6 weeks left in the season. There are some clubs that will not be advancing into Europe, and they will not be getting relegated. It's just kind of like a stone fact. And those teams are the ones that we sort of consider to be on the beach. And there are teams in that kind of middle tier. Sometimes, like a team, it's almost like they're playing for next season a little bit. Like I feel like Wolves have had some of this, right, where they've put together some good performances. Like you can kind of see like an identity forming there, right? But other teams, they just get like a little fried, right, a little exhausted. And I think Crystal Palace are the ultimate version of this for what feels like year in and year out now. It's like every year somehow they like lose out. It's like they like lose like their last like 10, 12 matches. It feels like they never win a match down the stretch, but somehow they've always accumulated enough wins that they're never at risk. And it's like, do you remember all of these Palace wins? It's like every season, it's like there is no doubt that Palace will be fine. And yet I can remember like 3 times all year when they won a match. It's a very... The Palace conundrum, Brandon, is really
sure. They started strong, and I think what they're suffering from now is the same thing they've been suffering from for seasons. Is they have no real identity on the pitch because management keeps turning over, and you thought that they were going to get that with Patrick Vieira, and ultimately he just couldn't keep that flywheel spinning. They still have really great players, though, and just to name one. The obvious one, Olise as well, and some makings of a decent defense. So I do think that they're number one on the beach just because they have this. I couldn't even tell you the name of the manager at Crystal Palace right now. That's how like little a story it's been. Oliver Glasner.
Wow.
he's Austrian. Okay, there's your little bio on Oliver Glasner. I don't think anything's been made of him, and I think Crystal Palace just struggled.
Quite a biographical sketch that you drew.
I'm sure a lot of sketch artists could probably draw his face based on how I described him just there. But like some teams who are mired in mid-table, I agree with you. Like the biggest problem is they just get fried because it is such a long season. There are clubs who would push to, like, I would much rather be in 10th place than 13th place because I get a bigger bag at the end of the season. Like there's money involved no matter where you finish at the table. There's also pride involved, professionalism involved. There's no tanking like you see in American sports, like to get a better draft pick or something like that. And then I like Muniz has been such a fantastic story at this part of the season because he really couldn't get a look at Fulham for the last, since he basically came in 2 years ago. And now he's hit the form of his life. And now he's motivated to keep that number 9 shirt for next season and to say, look, boss, like don't go shopping for another striker this summer. So you're kind of interested in those stories. But Crystal Palace, it's kind of like I would venture like a lot of these players are probably looking for a way out of this club as opposed to a way to stay there.
Yeah. And the reason that we're talking about this fantasy wise is that it's a pretty useful kind of, I don't know, like it's a useful idea to keep in your head when it comes to making transfers, right? Is like, am I about to bring in a player from a team that really has nothing to play for and no reason to play me 180 minutes every match, and I don't have a huge motivation either. I mean, every now and then you get the like kind of goal crazy guys where it kind of doesn't matter because they're just like they're obsessed with scoring, or maybe they have goal bonuses in their contract or something like that. But I think in general, it's like, Palace is a team where I had been sort of circling around like, maybe Eze in 34, even this Bournemouth defensive or, attacking double up that I have right now. I'm like, do I need to blow this up ahead of 34 now too? Like, do I just need to get Darwin myself? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and it's just because, and maybe it's a little unfair to even lump Bournemouth in here because they have won 3 in a row before this, for the Luton loss. And even that one was kind of a late loss. But I think Palace are there. I think Fulham by and large are there. Everton, it's actually, I would say that the rankings are actually pretty tight, all things considered, right? I think, the table, I should say. It's like, I'd say from 14th, 15th spot on down, there's still enough risk, right? Like, I think Everton are approaching safety, but I don't think they can feel fully safe yet, right? I think they've got they need a couple more wins. We're only at 29 points in the season.
Yeah, same for them. And you some sort of like less math-based ones, just kind of hunch-based ones is what's going on at Brentford. Brentford are in danger of getting dragged into a relegation scrap. But I'm not seeing, Ivan Toney, surely he gets sold this summer, given he's got 1 year left on his contract. Like, who at Brentford is motivated to keep this thing going apart from Thomas Frank? And then you go above Wolves, Brighton. I don't know. I get this sixth sense, Josh, that those Brighton players are sick of the sight of Roberto De Zerbi. It's like at this point, everyone's got to be asking questions like, what's this guy up to? Then Chelsea, total mess.
I mean, I don't think anyone's blaming Poch still. Like, and I don't think they should. But I mean, drawing away to Sheffield, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I wonder about Pochettino. Like, you kind of have to put him in the same conversation as Ten Hag, where, okay, Ten Hag's players maybe aren't up to scratch for what Manchester United fans would want, but you got to at least create some organization on the pitch, and you can't have the opposing team just driving through you mercilessly.
Okay, so for this week, Brandon, I'll cut you off there. For this week,
we can talk about all these. Are all these teams on the beach?
I think we should do this slowly, and I think for this week we'll add 2 teams to the On the Beach rankings. Maybe it'll be 2 a week. Maybe we'll add more as we go.
Great.
But I think Brighton and Bournemouth. No, actually, I'll keep Bournemouth for now. Brighton and Palace are officially on the beach and probably to be avoided for the rest of the season.
Agreed. Mark it. We'll see you next season, guys.
It's done. All right, great. All right, so let's move on here, Brandon. I want to talk about game week 33 and 34 a little bit. I do want to quickly say thank you to everyone who supports the podcast on Patreon. If you have enjoyed the podcast this season, if it's been helpful, if we've helped you win the league, or if it's just been fun thing to listen to on your morning commute or on your drive to work or whatever on the treadmill, and you want to say thank you, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. And a huge thank you to everyone who currently supports us. Several hundred, more than 500 people, Brandon, support the podcast. And so I also wanted to say a quick thank you to some new patrons, Brandon. Yeah. Tim W., Jared Simon Pete, James Murray Wood, and Rafi Karigian. So thank you to our newest Patreon supporters. If you join the pod and become a Patreon supporter, we do a little personalized thank you for you on the pod. And just a note, this June when we're off, we take our little end of season break. We do not charge our Patreon supporters, so it's a free month for everybody. You still get access to the Discord during that month. You also get an extra podcast that we do each week, usually Thursday evenings. And also a quick update on the Always Cheating Super League, Brandon. No Monday match this week, although there is next week. So good opportunity for us to read off the Super League top 10. In 10th is Lenny Peoples. Great name. Wow. Wish your name was Lenny Peoples.
Well, maybe Lenny is a great podcaster. Like, get in touch.
Josh Landon and Lenny Peoples. I mean, man, I got to find him and replace you. In 9th is Roy Gordon. In 8th is Peter Stead. 7th is Peter Halfsmo Steege. In 6th is Lauren Poost. It's interesting. Like, we're really starting to see a lot of recurring names early in the top 10. It's pretty unstable.
Digging in, right?
Yeah, exactly. In 5th is Garfield creator Jim Davis. Wow. In 4th is Chris McMenamin. In 3rd is Jake Holton. In 2nd is Christian Larich. And in 1st is Ben Houghton. So you have a Holton, that's Holton, and a Houghton, Houghton, all inside the top 10, Brandon.
This is crazy. I have two special shout outs before we move on with the show. I did want to thank our friend Andrew Davis, who wrote an email to us talking about how one can make fantasy fun again. You feel like your personal mini league with your friends has gotten too template. Well, Andrew and his pals agreed no one is going to own Salah or Haaland for the entire season. And he was saying that breathed new life into his mini league. I thought that was a really cool story. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. And also, for all of our Canadian, Toronto-based cheaters, there's going to be the first ever can there possibly be another FPL meetup that's occurred in the country of Canada, let alone Toronto? Well, it's happening next Saturday, April 13th at Scotland Yard. I'm going to be there. That's located 56th to Esplanade, kind of on the east side of Toronto. I'm just kind of getting my feet wet with the football bars here. But if you're in the greater Toronto area, please swing by on Saturday, April 13th. I'm going to get there around 9 a.m. It is a Spurs bar, so I have a hunch they'll be open for the 7:30 a.m. kickoff. But it's nothing formal. Yep. Just look for me. I don't think it's a big secret what I look like. So hope to see you there and have a beer.
That's great. Yeah, and I know some people have reached out on DM and other places to say that they're interested in coming, or at least that they are in Toronto, if nothing else, Brandon. So hopefully,
awesome.
Hopefully
it'll be fun.
It's a nice meetup. Yeah, take some pictures. I want to see what the inside of the other Scotland Yard looks like. Brandon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll be solving crimes while watching football. You can count on that.
Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Giannis Antetokounmpo for more than 32.5 points and LeBron James for more than 8.5 assists. Download the app today and use code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code BLUEWIRE on the Prize Picks app for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring podcasts on the Blue Wire Network. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System yet, then you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Wherever you are across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/Blue Wire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unified, UNIFYD, healing.com/Blue Wire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
All right, well, we've got Game Week 33 kicks off on Saturday. Are we going to get more Friday matches this season? I loved a Friday match, Brandon. I love it.
I know. You need an excuse to sort of knock off the old work email in the afternoon here in the States.
It's interesting. I'm going to be in Rome in a couple of weeks' time, Brandon. That's in my kids' spring break. And that actually is during Game Week 34. So I'm going to have the rare opportunity because honestly, I don't know about you, but we usually crash pretty late when we're doing, when you're on the town in a foreign country, it's like I never go to bed earlier than I do when I'm on vacation. It's always like, you think it'd be the other way around, but I'm like by 9 p.m. usually I'm fried. So I'm going to have a chance to hopefully watch some of these matches in real time. I don't know if I'm going to have to legally stream them or what, but I also found out that a friend of the podcast, Joe Lepper, was just in Rome himself. So
no kidding.
Why are these FPL managers going to Rome all of a sudden?
I mean, you're looking for inspiration, right? I assume you're going to the Colosseum and to look at where all the great gladiators used to perform. And this is the mentality that you need going into the final game weeks.
Going one higher, Brandon. I'm going to the Vatican. Okay, real inspiration. I'm gonna take an audience with Pope Francis, see if he can help me out, figure this season out. Like what?
Yeah, we need more gold leaf on this podcast. Is what I've decided. Also, are you planning to go to any live matches? Seeing some Serie A while you're there?
Maybe. They're Lazio play. That's the only one. Roma don't have any home matches that week, sadly. And Lazio, I'm like a little more intimidated by. I'm like, do I want to bring the whole family? Because I've heard it's a little more intense, the Lazio, crowd. But maybe I'm being judgmental. I don't really.
It's like the center of the ultra universe. Serie A is my understanding too. So good to sort of ask questions before.
Yeah, exactly. Before you bring a kid there for a 8 p.m. evening match or something like that. So we'll see. I hope to, but if not, we're going to Florence, but just for one day. So because it'd be fun to see Fiorentina play as well because they have the I love those purple kits. Those purple.
Very iconic,
Florence.
Right?
Yeah, very cool. All right. So anyway, Game Week 33 kicks off on Saturday. You'll be at Scotland Yard. I will be. Have my couch. But we have a nice run of matches this weekend. I think I would say we don't have any like standout. I'm just looking big picture before we dig into some of the FPL questions, but I wouldn't say there are any. It's actually I think it's a good match for a good weekend for FPL. Less of a good match from a kind of competitive standpoint. I mean, Newcastle Spurs should be interesting. I mean, Newcastle what a weird season, right? Where they keep having these kind of whatever performances, but then, I mean, they've got 2 wins in a row now, right? Like a kind of, reasonably impressive away win at Fulham. Honestly, they scored twice. One of them got chalked off, right? But they're pretty in control of that match. And but then Spurs they can kind of beat or lose to anybody, right? And so I think that the first match of the weekend may actually be the most fun for me, like just a pure watch standpoint.
Yeah, totally. Funny, I just got kicked out of the fantasy site. I love it. It's like being on a VPN at work when it just decides to totally log you off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Like, I feel like we've had some big marquee matchups like City, Arsenal, and then Liverpool, Man United this game week recently. And it's nice to see some kind of like, these feel like more just like fixtures made for fantasy managers.
So. Yeah. So what do you think about, okay, let's start things off with the captaincy. Okay. Is there an argument for a non-Holland captain choice? Man City hosts Luton on Saturday. However, right, this is the important thing. So this I sort of make a point before you respond here, which is the key question to me for Game Week 33 is how much the midweek fixtures that we have this week, 5 Premier League clubs play in Europe this week, how much they're going to affect Game Week 33. And I think what's interesting about it is because of where we are at the table right now, you can make an argument that it's the Europa League and Europa Conference League squads that are actually a little more at risk maybe of some rest and rotation over the weekend than Arsenal and Man City, who really can't maybe afford to do that. But still, Man City play on Tuesday, and then again on Saturday, and then they play the second leg of their Champions League match the following Wednesday. So, do you think that there's any risk of Haaland maybe not starting this match? I mean, Pep has already shown in the last week, right, that he's happy to not play Haaland for 90, that he's happy not to play Foden for 90. It's sort of, it's an incredible luxury to be rotating these incredible players. But, so I guess, sorry, to just restate my question, is Haaland the runaway captain pick for Game Week 33?
I don't think so. I think Liverpool, we just talked about, chief on the beach team is Crystal Palace, and add on that going to Anfield. Add on that Liverpool. I mean, they do have the Thursday match, but I think Klopp is far more likely to rotate in Europe. Just given the standard Liverpool focus on the Premier League. Yep. So. The problem is Salah's kind of in this weird moment in his form where there's going to be a lack of confidence in captaining Salah. But I think you say the same thing about Haaland. What's going on with his form? And I agree with you. Like the Arsenal and City playing on Tuesday, it's almost they Tuesday matches in Europe to me feel like there's like it creates the least amount of risk that there's going to be any rest and rotation the following weekend. Now, if City go and lay an egg in Madrid and they are then looking at like overturning a 1-2-3 goal deficit in the return leg, then maybe Pep has to do some rotation. But
because surely Luton, like surely he can field Julian Alvarez and Bernardo Silva, whatever his second string is, and still feel fairly confident of a victory, right? I mean, even though Luton are dangerous, certainly, but like that's not a match where even Luton is going to go in thinking, oh yeah, we're going to get 3 points from this.
But Haaland's not a player that needs rest. He doesn't actually run a whole lot. He hasn't been able to run because no passer on Man City has broken him free like in months. So the number of sprints that he's done, I couldn't even say. And
he was just rested.
Yeah. And Julian Alvarez is not in any great form himself. So I don't see a lot of competition there. So I think Haaland is a very safe captaincy, in my opinion, a safe captaincy against Luton and a safe start. And Arsenal, I guess you kind of put them in the same boat in terms of I don't have a great fear of rotation, but I do have a small amount of fear about this Aston Villa fixture. I could see Emery kind of tactically trying to shut up shop there. And Arsenal do have some vulnerability in terms of like if a team figures out like the middle to low block, then they can struggle to score those 3, 4, 5, 6 goals that sometimes they can. So I think that might be a somewhat low scoring match, even though I think we'll see a full strength squad from Arteta.
Yeah, I know and Villa are an interesting position because in theory you would expect them to prioritize Europe, but they obviously can't because they are tied with Spurs right now on goal difference. Right, they're Spurs are actually ahead of them by 3 goals at the moment, 20-17. So there's no. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If anything, you're right. I mean, that could be an opportunity for them to kind of try to nil their way to a point or something like that, right? Like try to like make it as kind of low scoring as possible.
I guess it wouldn't be like the fact that there's probably going to be 5 with the coefficient 5 Premier League clubs who get into the Champions League. Maybe that takes a little bit of the pressure off, but still, that I think that reinforces your idea that playing for a draw maybe is like what's best suited. You're going to be Villa will be tired from the Thursday night Europe fixture. Maybe a point will be fine for them. Why just go out and risk getting destroyed by Arsenal?
Is that a lock though? I mean, five for next season for England. It's not a lock, is it?
No, I think it is because the England teams are making it so far now in the Europa and Europa Conference League. I don't know what has to be locked into place to make that happen, but all the pundits seem to think that it's likely at this point.
Okay. Yeah, but certainly you can't play that way, right?
Don't want to play with fire now. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money on the table.
It's a lot of money. It'd be very cool to see Villa in the Champions League next year, obviously, too. And they're it's amazing. I mean, they're 11 clear of Man United in 6th place. It's really remarkable how well they've consistently done this season, even on honestly a pretty tough spell, right? I mean, they've only picked up 5 points from 15 in the last 5. Yeah. I love having this form table up here, Brandon, that I'm looking as we're talking. I should do this more often. It's a great gives me a great sense of the kind of how sure. I mean, it's there's nothing fancy about it, right? We just sort of looking, you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like 3 losses in 5.
Do you remember early in the season when people were like Villa title contenders? Like they were just not losing matches, and they beat the crap out of Man City earlier in the season, and they have kind of come back down to earth. But I think it would be very fair for them to take 5th place into the Champions League.
It's interesting the way they've all kind of beaten each other up a little bit this season, right? I mean, Arsenal are top of the table with 4 losses. They're only on 71 points on the season. So with 7 matches left, even if they won all 21 points, right? That would still get them to 92. That's significantly less than some other than Liverpool and Man City's recent kind of top clubs. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I don't think that means I think parity is amazing. Like that it's, I love that we're talking about the table this late in the season, right? Even on a fantasy podcast. So yeah, I think, and West Ham are another one where, I mean, it would just be kind of amazing for them to go Europa Conference League to Europa League to Champions League
winners under David Moyes next season. It's going to happen.
Story. So of all the clubs, I would say they're the ones most likely to take the Europa League seriously, as they should, I think.
Well, but there's a wrinkle there, and I'm looking at the Europe fixtures. West Ham are playing Bayer Leverkusen on Thursday, a team who has famously not lost a single match under Xabi Alonso this season, which I do not give to use a second captainism. I do not give West Ham a rat's chance of beating.
I don't know though. Europa League is funky though. Like something about those Thursday matches. It's like the best team doesn't always win those, right? It's like it's a weird. I don't know. And Leverkusen may just be firmly thinking about the
Bundesliga.
With the Bundesliga.
I mean, they're 16 points clear of Bayern right now, which is just ridiculous. I know they might be on the beach. Can they clinch it
as soon as next weekend? Yeah, maybe they're on the beach. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's not like they need to win the Euro. I mean, it'd be nice to win. It'd be like a cool feather in the cap. But they're in the Champions League no matter what next season.
Yeah, for sure.
So so I think that'll be interesting. I guess when you kind of break it down, it's interesting how maybe the European stuff actually doesn't change things too much. for the weekend. We've sort of gone one by one. I mean, West Ham, I think, is still the one, right? Unless, I don't know, if they if they go to 9-0 to Bayern to Leverkusen, okay, sure. But like otherwise, if it's like a 2-1, they're down, or 1-0, right? Something like that. I think that I could see them fielding a pretty weakened squad for that home match versus Fulham in order to prioritize the Europe the next week. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, it's kind of annoying that you're. Well, it's not annoying because it's not like our decisions before Europe coming back this week were easy. So it's just I don't need another layer of difficulty, man.
Yeah, exactly. We're just introducing more concerns for people to ponder, as they go. All right. So just looking, we have I think we've got 5 questions that I pulled for this pod. But before we do that, what are your current thoughts? Can I take a look at your team, Brandon? Can I see?
Well, you do that. With? I have to do my dual factor authentication one. Because as I said, the site logged me out. Here we go. Okay. Should I read out loud what my numbers are while I'm doing this?
No, I'll yeah, that's tempting, but I'll pull mine up here.
Yeah.
I think that it's I think it's an interesting week, and I will say. So Dubravka, I didn't even talk about this, but he's been such a disappointment for me. But his 9 points were a real. I ended up on a very small green arrow this week, and it was almost entirely down to his 9 points in that match. I have 2 transfers, and I have a pretty obvious transfer to make, which is the Stupinan out. And I know that they're playing Burnley, but Burnley are gonna score 2 on. I mean, Brighton cannot keep a clean sheet. Or maybe it's like you never know with them anymore. Somehow they kept a clean sheet away to Brentford a couple weeks ago. I don't know how they did that, or a couple days ago, right? It was in 30-31. But I don't try. And he didn't play a minute in that match, and they kept a clean sheet. So
that's the secret.
So there's the secret, exactly. And he's just the astute. I mean, first of all, he just shouldn't be in my team at all, right? And I have had many chances to drop and haven't done it. So I have 2 transfers, and I'm looking forward to starting Sarabia. I think that'll be. I wish he looks so good in these matches, doesn't he? Like, he's a really wonderful player. And so it'd be fun to have him.
He looks so good. We decided he looked like Andrew Scott from.
He does look like Andrew Scott.
The hit show
Sherlock. Yeah, and Fleabag season 2.
Yeah, right.
So starting Sarabia for sure. And I think the moves for me are actually pretty easy this week. I mean, I don't love dropping Son either, but he doesn't play in 34, right? And so it's not that much of a loss anyway. And so Son to Diaz and a Stupinan to Ben White would be the moves that I'm most strongly considering. And that would get me to 3 Arsenal and 3 Liverpool, which I think is the most important thing to have for Game Week 34. And otherwise, I'd be kind of rolling with a team that I think otherwise looks pretty good. Haaland captain. I think Salah will ultimately. I'm just going to literally end real time in the pod to make Salah my vice captain. Solanke, huge disappointment, as we all know, in the last few weeks. Does he actually turn into Nicholas Jackson in 35? I don't want to think about that.
Nicholas Jackson has looked horrible the last few weeks.
Maybe I'll just field 2 forwards. I don't know. Like, I never want to do it, but maybe now's I'll just keep Semenyo there for $4.5 million.
Yeah,
so
go ahead. Oh, well, I was just going to say further on Nicholas Jackson that something that does not need to be said at all. He is still a player that could just miraculously pop off with something in a double. So
that would be the find a positive way to look at 35 that we were talking about before.
He gets minutes.
He gets minutes. So if I make those 2 moves, that'll give me 10 players playing in home matches in 32, which 33, excuse me, which it sounds great on paper. Let's go for it. It feels like a good positive way to approach it. So that's where I'm leaning. I don't know. Any thoughts, questions, concerns?
No, I'm kind of curious. I'm goalkeeper curious right now for my own team. I just can't imagine you making a goalkeeper transfer there. I agree with you. I saw Sarabia on a ton of benches in game week 32. So that was just more interesting to see how big the Sarabia bandwagon has gotten. And I agree, it would be fun to finally get to break him out and play with them like a new toy.
And we probably haven't pitched him enough on this pod. I mean, he's 4.7 million. Maybe he's probably actually gone up a little bit since then. But is he still? Yeah, he's still at 4.7, which is kind of outrageous. 4.7 million, has been getting starters minutes, playing on, I think, typically on the right flank, and he's on pens. Again, this is partially because of some injuries, across the squad, but should be pretty safe. Even if Hwang makes it back into the squad, Hwang typically plays on the left, so or as the forward. So I think that Sarabia should be pretty safe. He's cheap and he plays twice in 34. So even if there's some long-term risk, if you're he's cheap enough that if you don't have a wild card left, you could just bench him. And if you do have a wild card left, then all you have to do is get to the next 3 weeks of them. Right. And so I think there's a lot of arguments in his favor.
Yeah, I agree. I like your team for game week 33. Like with those moves, you're set there. So that's the game week in front of us. Just looking again ahead to game week 34. What's the one free transfer you're looking to make there? I'm noticing an absence of additional, or I'm noticing an absence of Darwin here, who is maybe a player we don't want to talk about.
Well, I'd love to have him, but
will you have enough money with these moves that you're planning to make? What money will be left?
Well, the thing is, if I turn Son into Diaz, then I wouldn't be able to.
You'd already have 3 Liverpool because you have Virgil, right?
Exactly. So I'd be prioritizing Diaz over Darwin, and that would leave me one transfer. What I would most likely do, assuming that Haaland doesn't get injured or that I don't just decide to go without Haaland, would be to move for a double game week keeper. And that would probably be Jordan
I knew
Pickford.
It was going to come up, the goalkeepers.
Yep. So I think Pickford is the one that I'm sort of leaning for, because again, for 34, I'm planning to wild card in 35, as I believe you are as well. Yes. So I'm only looking for the best keeper for one specific week. If like in your case, are you considering a goalkeeper for 33 as well, like a possible goalkeeper move?
No, I'm not. But so I can talk you through my plans, which it's basically.
Did you get your 2-factor working?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready. I'm finally ready. Ready.
Good. I want to see it.
Yeah. Now, thank you for your patience, everybody. Okay, so. The planned moves are either, like you, Son out for Luis Diaz, and then Botman. Look at my defense. I've got Kabore, who can't play against his parent club. Whatever, it's Man City. You'd never start him. And then Botman, who's out for the rest of the season.
Did you know that? I think I forgot that Man City was his parent club, by the way.
Well, you're not keeping up on, you know more about Crystal Palace's manager now than you do about Issa Kabore.
I feel like there's 1 or 2 times a season where this happens, though, where someone's ineligible to play. And I'm like, really? He's on loan from that club?
So here's the conundrum, and it does come down to Son, and I think the answer is pretty apparent. But the desire is strong enough to keep Son for Newcastle. And I think it'd have to be pretty strong because I have no plans to captain him. Then I would turn Thomas Souček into some really cheap guy like McAtee, who would then give me the money I need in the bank to turn Muniz into Darwin ahead of game week 34. So that would be, I think, what we were discussing at the start of the pod, the very passive way to go about this. I think that I owe Son 1 more week or whatever. Therefore, I'm going to leave 2 really strong Liverpool attackers on the wayside and wait for that double move in game week 34. The right thing to do, I think, is pretty clear. It's Muniz and Son out to bring in Diaz and Darwin. And then I've got my full load of Liverpool coverage for 34, and then I just have to is the problem with that is that I actually would have to do a triple move because I don't have exact enough money without also doing this Thomas Souček move. So.
Okay, I think the lens to think about that, because there had to be a lot of people who are in the same position, is if you were going to make a -4 at some point anyway before 34, then it's like you could just move it up a week, right?
Yeah, let's try this. Okay, so if I drop Muniz and Son, and I'm gonna bring in Luis Diaz. Look at him; he's rising through the ranks. And Darwin, who's also there, and I am points. I'm well short, so I'm looking at a -4 to do that. So
I mean, how much is Souček? Souček is 4.9.
4.9. So
is there a 4-3 midfielder in the game?
Oh, plenty. Yeah, there are like plenty of 4-2s. Yeah, so that would be a -4. But yeah, the very conservative passive route would be just do the Souček move and take 2 free transfers into the game week 34 deadline. This is like I feel like I have to be proactive here. You know, where we are with our ranks, the idea is to be aggressive. Now that the fear is in the back of your mind that Son, decent fixture at Newcastle, could he punish me? And I mean, I think the risk is lower there than the opportunity to bring
his ownership
Liverpool guys.
Yeah, and his ownership is going to keep getting lower and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it looks like you could bring in Newcastle's Anderson, who's been getting minutes in like every match, and he's 4.2. So then you could at least have a tiny bit of coverage. Just in case.
think McAtee is kind of like a roll of the dice I'd be willing to take just because Sheffield United do double in 34. I would bench him.
But he's 4.4, my friend.
I think he's dropping. I think he's dropping tonight.
Wow.
We'll see. We'll watch. I mean, this is like so this entire plan too does hinge on the prices not fluctuating too much, which then brings me to the goalkeeper thing.
No, Brendan, I have to stop you for a second because it's incredible, right? There are people like the guy next to me who sat down just to watch Everton play. And just at the bar on Saturday, and just he was an Everton supporter. He's an American guy there cheering and had a good time. And then there are people like me and you who are talking at 10 o'clock at night about elaborate plans that involve McAtee dropping in place. In place.
Yeah,
I don't know where that came from.
He's dropping in place into my team. Yeah, that's what's happening there.
It's all dropping into place.
Yeah, but Leno to another goalkeeper, a doubler, would also get me. Like I just have to take another hit to get another doubler. So that's a -8 over the next 2 weeks is also something I'm strongly considering. I think part of the passivity too comes with you start talking through all this and you're just kind of like, this is nonsense. Like, can I just roll with the team that I have going into this deadline? Like, I think this team looks fine.
So you probably can then, honestly, or you could just make one move, right? I mean, you could. The problem, I mean, the problem is. Move. Yeah, I mean the problem is it'd be nice to have a better defender, right? Because if you're starting, it's either Pau Torres away to Arsenal or nobody, right? But the problem is you can't get a better defender without making two moves,
more
right?
money.
I mean, you're honestly in a very similar position to me, and that's ultimately why Son has to go. Even though I love Son and I think he's great, but I need two good players as opposed to his one very good player. Like I need, it's more valuable for me to have those two spots improved.
So I think I punt on this a little bit to wait and see if maybe the midweek European fixtures solve this conundrum for me. There's always that hope.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe, the decision will get made for you. Yeah. In other words.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, let's move on to some questions here, Brandon. FPL Brooklyn says there's a lot of focus on who to get this week to build towards the double in 34. But for those of us who are in free hit 34, are there different players we should target this week that can help us get ahead for the final few weeks? I got 2 frees, and I'm honestly not sure how to use them. It's a good question. I think you could take a punt on a Chelsea player, right? Because they host Everton, and they host Everton in 33, and they have a double in 35. So you could kind of go for it there. I don't think again, I don't know what his team looks like, but even someone like Madison, you could see Madison doing some, even though he's been in really bad form, doing some kind of damage against Newcastle, who just keep losing defenders every week, right? And so, I think those are the 2 teams I'd look at.
I wonder about Manchester City and Rodri in particular. So one way to think about making fantasy fun for you in the run-in is you've got to back yourself. And often I was talking to our friend Nick on the Discord, and he's like, maybe I'm going to write this season off. I think it's time for me to just start getting players in who I like. And Rodri was a player who was really interesting to him. And the advice is you've got to really back yourself to say, I am going to bring in Rodri, and Rodri would have rewarded anyone who brought him in this week with another assist. His form continues. That's true. It's like traditionally not like a real fantasy asset, but he's having a great season. Rodri is cheap. No one is looking at a Man City triple up right now, but Man City do have a double in game week 37. So I think he fits nicely into a squad, especially if you're free hitting in 34.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't know why it's so hard for me. I guess, but I think it does make sense. Like, I don't know. I have a real blockage around like central midfielders and stuff. Just like it's like when they have like a more typical central midfielder match, right, where they just like do nothing and get booked, then I'm just like, why did I get, someone like this? I think Foden would be like, if I could have anybody in game week 33, it'd probably be Phil Foden, who I just like, dropping him was so, even though he didn't play a minute this weekend, like, I just feel like I'm still reeling from dropping him, and he's fully rested. So he's almost certainly going to play in this Luton match. Right. So
this is the delight of Pep's players is he doesn't make a lot of substitutions. So if your guy gets benched, he's probably not going to come on for a 1-point cameo. And so then you get to play the bench wank game.
Yeah, I mean, this FPL George Gabriel, Brandon said he attempted to transfer Foden in. Says don't like planning too hard around the doubles as it so often backfires. Sure. I don't know what George is talking about. Yeah, that's crazy. And I'd rather go with good players with good fixtures within reason, of course. But talk me out of it by all means. So should we talk him out of Foden in?
Well, the only reason to not do it is it blocks you from, if you don't have a free hit, it blocks you from loading up for game week 34 doubles. That's the only reason at this point.
Yeah.
So but I mean, I want to talk George into doing it. I think it is sensible.
Yeah, and Man City play Brighton in game week 34. Mm-hmm. I mean, Brighton are terrible. So that's probably fine, right? Like you could just like Man City versus Brighton in one match. I mean, Phil Foden just scored 20 points in one game week, right? So I guess I won't be doing it. I don't know. I guess first of all, I think that Crystal Palace is probably a match that's borderline as good as Luton, as you were sort of suggesting earlier. And then they play twice in 34. So I'm just going to do the like kind of math move of like three is better than two and get Diaz myself. But I think the argument for Foden is strong, right? But there is enough kind of always just perma risk around Pep, right? That you could bring in a player who just won't start this week, especially if they lose or if they're losing to Real Madrid in the Champions League.
And for us, we're a little biased against this strategy because we will be wildcarding in 35. So we can just sort of like push Foden aside. No double in 34. Yep. We can easily get him in 35. So we can just like put that conversation off for a few weeks.
All right, well, two more questions. First one comes from FPL Dougal. He says, if you had all the chips left, how would you proceed? Imagine having every chip left. Even the first half of the season wild card.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Sure. I would free hit in 34. I would wild card in 35 or 36 and bench boost in 37. Now, I get the argument of how the bench boost is probably not going to be as appealing in 37 with all the rotation that starts to emerge at the tail end of the season as our on the beach rankings sort of like really take hold, Josh. But I think that to me feels like the biggest upside. Like I feel like there's more upside with the free hit in 34 than in 37. So that just does put the bench boost on 37.
If he has all the chips, he has a triple captain as well.
All right.
Triple captain Haaland. Home to Luton, 34. I mean,
well, if that's the case, then just triple captain and 37 on a doubler. So then you free hit for the doubles in 34, triple captain for the double, whoever looks the best in 37. And then you just bench boost, I don't know, whenever you actually have a fully fit bench, which good luck. That's never going to happen.
Right, because you couldn't bench boost in 35 if you're wild carding that week as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's it's a champagne problem to have, though.
Yeah, it sure is. I can't relate.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much. If I hadn't played any of my chips so far this, I'm not sure how much worse off I would be. I'd be down about. First of all, I'd be up on my free hit because I would have had more points if I just hadn't free hit, and I gained, I think, 10 points from my triple captain. So I'd be down 10 points, but I'd have all my chips intact.
Yeah.
I would take that. I would give me 2 more chips and 10 fewer points right now, Brandon. I would be
sure.
I'd be happily taking that. All right. So FPL Moo says, this again is a question a little more for 35, although I think it is relevant again, especially if you're in a position like FPL Brooklyn, where you're free hitting in 34, which a lot of people are, then 33 suddenly becomes a game week where you're really planning for 35, right? If you're free hitting, right? Because you might as well, why let a transfer go to waste, right? So he says, they say, I don't know, Moo, male or female, says, considering what we've seen from Chelsea this season, other than Palmer, are we really considering many other Chelsea assets for game week 35?
No, we're not. I just don't even know which way to go with that. The midfielders, Gallagher has been the most appealing. Enzo Fernandez is Caicedo. No, like it's such a defensive oriented midfield with these
they don't keep clean sheets. It's very weird,
Yeah, and there's been a fair amount of rotation in the defense with the center backs. I mean, Disasi, like in my limited view of Chelsea, feels like they're possibly their worst defender, but he's the one who gets the most minutes,
consistent minutes.
Gusto was the guy, but now he's just flagged. And is that worth the risk given what we expect from Chelsea? I don't think we expect enough from them. And that's when I think you really do have to consider the myth of the over planning for the double game weeks, or how it might not be worth it. Like just talking yourself into a Chelsea player simply because they have a double, and what are you giving up in the process?
Triple up. Yeah, I know. I mean, and they have 2 doubles, which I guess helps a little bit, but again, it does feel like, 2 times 2 is 4, right? It's not so. Yeah, I mean, and it's a pretty bad double too, right? Villa away, Spurs at home. It's not a bad double necessarily from an attacking point of view. Defensively, I don't love it. I think Gallagher might be the one to consider. I mean, I don't know. How do you say? I want to say Madueke, right? Yeah, I'm not. I'm saying that in my terrible Midwestern accent, but he scored a great goal today. And one of those like Palmer got the assist, but did very little to help with that goal. But he scored a great goal today. So, but he's barely played, and so you can't really trust him. I mean, honestly, Gallagher is almost the only one you could genuinely trust. And Nicholas Jackson, coming off 3 straight blanks, he does play 90 like every week. So I guess that's something. He had 3 attacking returns in a row in game weeks 25 through 27. So again, this is where let's give it a couple more weeks. Maybe someone starts to emerge in 33 and 34 that makes them more appealing in 35, right? That's kind of a boring answer, but I don't love any. I probably wouldn't make a Chelsea transfer for 30, for 35. I'd probably try to find someone on Spurs instead that I would try to target, right? Yeah. I would just get Porro or something like that and hope that he can get on attack and return away to Newcastle.
Take Cole Palmer out of Chelsea, and their top fantasy performer is Raheem Sterling. Do with that what you will.
Yeah, who doesn't even play anymore. I mean, it's like, he basically doesn't play anymore, which is crazy. Yeah. And 0 minutes in 32, 19 and 31, 17 and 30. So yeah, it's crazy how he's just off the table.
Where does Raheem Sterling play his football? in next season. Tell me where.
Wow. I mean, is he going like the full Daniel Sturridge? Like, is it like, I don't know. Like what's the West Brom? Is it like a promoted team next year? Like maybe it's like Leeds or something like that, right? Yeah. It's like some, that would actually be kind of cool. Like
Saudi Arabia, it seems like the most likely.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be fun to see him kind of do the, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name, but you'll remember it. Mm-hmm. Who is the Man United player who went to West Ham and had that great half season a couple years ago?
Oh yeah. Jesse Lingard.
It'd be fun to see Sterling go to a club where they just let him do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And, and they just kind of needed someone with his like kind of pace and quality.
Here's a fun one for Nicholas Jackson. He's on 9 yellow cards. Let's see.
Oh no!
I think what is the cutoff is like in the next couple of game weeks, but just have to flag that. Couldn't miss.
When
games.
Is that? Yeah. When does that cutoff happen? It's like 30. It's like 32 or something, isn't it? Or 34 maybe? I can't remember.
So he'd have to survive one more game week, he's very greedy with those yellow cards.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good note to end on there. A little bonus Chelsea discussion. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to the pod. Thank you for everyone who supports the pod. Again, if you want to say thank you and help support the podcast and get an extra one each week, we'll do one on this Thursday. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Brennan, would you like to thank our producer patrons?
Of course. Big thanks to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Bob Ascoon, James Holland, Dave Wagner, Lodall, Nick Wright, Lazarus Yanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Vulgar, Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Graham, Thomas Tislov, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Frode Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lally, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Gareth H., Rune Sandberg, and Brian Clark. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Find a video of this episode on YouTube, youtube.com/@alwayscheating. Follow us wherever you get social media, etc., etc. Whew, man, Josh, it has been a long weekend.
You flew in.
Some people know I flew into New York twice.
About the earthquake. Yeah, I know. Brendan was literally about to land when the earthquake went off here in New York. So did you say like you're literally beginning your descent and then they just picked back up and brought you back to Toronto?
Yeah, we were on a little propeller plane and they only had enough fuel to get us back to Toronto. Like they couldn't go into a holding pattern. So they're like, we got to go back. So we flew to New York twice on Friday, which was insane.
That's crazy.
So I'm excited to kind of be back home, though I'm away from my podcast partner. But I will be back in New York for game week 38.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And my birthday weekend, no less. That'll be fun. So, all right. If anyone has any Rome tips, let me know as well. I'll be there in a couple weeks' time. So talk to you soon, all. Bye.